ladies and gentlemen, our WebVR panel. Take it away, Amir.
Okay, so you've heard from some of these guys already, which was unexpected. We'll start from the end and work our way back. Fabien, Benetou is a freelancer, an A-frame contributor, but I really don't know what he's up to. I think he's the most mysterious character of all. I'll let you guys all describe yourselves a little bit in a bit. Thomas, I think you're, I'm not sure, but I think you're one of the only WebVR startups that, aside from Visor, that are frameworks and platforms. But maybe we can get into where you're going. Too bad Lane isn't here to join you as well. Antti from Visor, I mentioned one of the coolest and most popular frameworks based in Finland. And Diego from Samsung's Internet group. So we have a pretty diverse mix of people together. But Fabien, I'll start with you. Maybe you can give a few thoughts about how you're in this whole disastrous situation, how you got into it, and then work our way back.
Okay. Okay, so we have, I can like speak for half an hour or something?
Maybe we'll give you like a minute each.
No, it's super short. I have a wiki where I organize all my notes, and then it's very intangible. So I thought, oh, it would be really nice if I could have all my notes around floating and organize them. And, but I can't print them because I'll destroy the planet, and then I'll look like a crazy person with my documents everywhere. And then somebody made me try a DK1. Now that's really cool, but I don't have one right now, so I'll try the cardboard. And then I started to prototype with that, and then I just couldn't stop. That's it. That's how I put the finger in the cogs. And then since I gave a bunch of workshops and made content and made toolings for VR.
And how did you get into the A-frame community specifically?
Okay, so another half an hour. The A-frame community, so I was playing like pretty much everybody else with, except maybe the Canvas and others too, with 3GS. And then because I'm not such a good coder, I copy-paste. Like you have the O'Reilly book on how to copy-paste efficiently, so I do that. And on 3GS, that's like pretty much a pattern. Like, oh, somebody has done something cool, I'll copy-paste it, edit it, and that's not so clean. And so when I started to play with A-frame, the idea was that you can do that in a proper manner. You have the registry, the components, all that. And then, yeah, we discussed more and more with all the guys from the Mozilla VR team, and yeah,
cool.
That's what happened.
Thomas, how did you get into WebVR?
I started working for a company 3 years ago, which was making a 3D social platform on the web, on WebGL at the time. A few, like starting from 2015, I heard of the Oculus Rift, and the DK2 was coming out. Went out a few months before, so I managed to get one. And I had the news from Brandon Jones, which managed to have the Google Chromium enabling WebVR with DK2. So, like, I pushed my boss to have the DK2 and make it work. And in a few days, I managed to have it working, and it was like very easy. Like, it was more a pain to set up the DK2 than to set up WebVR inside what we have before. And so from there I joined Boost VC, an incubator, a VR incubator in San Francisco, near San Francisco, where I met Antti and the Visor team, which was there as well. And it got me going on the WebVR. We met all the WebVR scene in San Francisco, which was very vivid, and I wanted to bring that back in Europe, and been trying since. And now I'm working on my own company, building a tool to enable people to take their VR content, push it onto the web without coding knowledge, actually. So in a very easy fashion.
Cool, thank you. Antti, I think you're probably, one of the earliest guys who got into the scene, daringly.
Yes. Well, I'm a designer. My background is in design, and when WebGL was coming, like in WebGL you can do 3D graphics in the browser. And I'm a web designer, so I wanted to get into it, and there was no tools for me to use, so I would have to learn programming. So then I managed to convince some programmers to create a tool for me, and that's kind of how this project evolved. And first it was only a tool for WebGL, but then in 2014 somebody called me and said, this VR stuff is happening and you have to make your tool to support VR. And we Googled it, and there was no way to get access to the Oculus DK2 sensors from the browser. But then that same week, Mozilla announced WebVR API. So we were like, whoa, let's do it. And so we got in the first week of WebVR.
Very cool, thank you. And Diego, you have an interesting background, and it's really good to have Samsung on board in this panel to get the perspective of the, the browser part as well.
Yeah, well, my background, I was doing a PhD. Back in the day, it was a PhD in stereoscopic user interfaces. So we were playing with all the cool 3D stuff and bringing stuff out of the browser, seeing if that could improve desirability of software. We all know where 3D is now and where it went. So I did an internship in Samsung a couple of years ago. A-Frame did not exist at the moment, so we were just playing with 3JS, the Leap Motion, and kind of trying to get this photo sharing application and being able to control it with your hands. Then I decided when the internship was over that it was about time that I should finish my PhD. So pretty much I just disconnected from all VR and went back to 3D, finished my PhD, and then I came back to Samsung, working for the Samsung Internet team, the browser, and we wanted to focus on the things that are strong in our browser, and VR is one of them. And then slowly started meeting the guys at Mozilla, and it just made sense that we would be using frameworks like A-Frame, also other frames like, for example, Play Canvas to create these type of experiences. And then, from there it's just pretty much the same as everyone else. You just get hooked. And once you see the experiences and how easy it is not only to create them but to share them, you just continue.
Right. Well, I always looked at what was happening until recently as if people were ignoring WebVR in the mainstream and so on, as if it were some conspiracy, which I still kind of do. But I mean, what do you guys think about what's kind of happened? It's kind of been like a wave just gaining momentum, and today I think it's one of the heights, to be honest, with the experiments Google project launched as well. I mean, it's just tons of support. Are you surprised by it?
It was the plan all along.
Yeah.
Surprised there.
It was obvious it was going to happen, but yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Because, me talking to people before, when you go to events and no one knows about it, that's not really the indicator. So I guess it was in incubation wherever the inevitability was.
So yeah, we were talking about it a few minutes before, but like Google started 2 years ago. There was just like one guy at Google working on it, and we were like, dude, you need backup, you need people working with you, and they were like, yeah, but Google is taking it slow and so on. And like since last summer, they recruited new people, and now it's really going to grow very fast, like way faster than it used to be. And so yeah, that's like normal curve of evolution of WebVR, and it's going to hit the masses, and they will get to know what it is, but they don't need to know what WebVR is, they just need to see it to understand what it's meant for.
So I mean, it did take time, but so far it was really hacks, experimentation, version 0 point something. So of course you get excited by it, and if you want to rely on it to deliver a professional product, then you're a little bit scared, you're cautious about it. But now that you see actual resources being poured in, all the major players, so all those, but also Facebook, hiring on all their WebVR teams, it was from hack and experimentation to now it actually works, and you can push actual quality content on it. So it's still experimentation and 0 point something, and we enjoy the bleeding edge, but it's a bit harsh when it breaks from time to time. You need to be cautious with it. But yeah, it did take time, but because at the beginning, when it started with Mozilla and also Google, it was just a hack. It was how can we actually play Quake Live on it? Yeah, it does kind of work. You get kind of sick, but it does kind of work. And now it's becoming I don't want to say industrial, but yeah, professional. So
how would
ramping up.
How would you respond to someone who says WebVR? I mean, my stuff, what I'm making, is only high fidelity. That's where the market is. That's what consumers want, like if they even know. How would you respond to that?
Well, that's fine. I mean, everything doesn't have to be WebVR.
Right.
You can do your stuff in Unity. It's nice. We have web stuff. We have native apps. Everything is required. So it's cool to have the whole selection of what you can do.
I was at a talk yesterday, and he was mentioning, he spent the typical story. They spent the team $250,000, and then they didn't even make it up. It's the usual story I hear when you go for one particular avenue, because the number of people are just not there. And of course, I think all the high fidelity routes are fine because it's a whole canvas. But it has been more, very much the whole story is one and only a minority supporting WebVR.
We actually talked to a lot of big companies because we want to do commercial WebVR projects. And these companies, they don't like this kind of siloed VR a lot because, if you make a VR app, it's only for Oculus and whatever, but they are really excited about WebVR because it will, can reach a huge audience. All their clients or customers can see the stuff. So you really have to know your client.
Right.
Just a quick thing on the high fidelity. The fidelity is there. Like if you use WebVR on a Vive, you can't. Most I don't think. I'll do the test. If anybody can distinguish native and WebVR on the precision, on the fidelity, I bet not. But I'll play a beer if somebody wants to play that game. And somebody else, if you're not a WebGL, OpenGL programmer, and you give to somebody in the street a WebVR experience with high quality assets and a native experience, again, I'm ready for anybody wants to do the bet, or beer or champagne, okay, I believe in it. Most people, 99%, won't make the difference. So the fidelity is there, it's reliable, and you get your room scale with no problem, and the quality of the asset is also there. So yeah, if you're using the latest extension of OpenGL and you're really into it, but it's not what the consumer or the people who will have the experience will notice it. They will not be able to distinguish the two, in my opinion. Ready to take the bet.
I've sent I write articles for VentureBeat for some of the WebVR updates, at least from my end, and I typically quote these kind of gentlemen in those articles. And I've recently circulated an email about how WebVR is also unique in being a magic window that doesn't require a VR headset necessarily to consume the content. And that's kind of like a double-edged sword from one point of view. What are your thoughts on that particular angle?
I think it's very powerful when you mention these magic window because, and I know that it's a matter of perception what is virtual reality, but if you can enable accessibility on all the content that you're creating, then that is possibly even more powerful than visual fidelity and than any other thing that you can mention because you are enabling for an experience to run without even necessarily having to have this headset. And then once you think about this as an entry point for many other type of experiences that you might want to scale up, as long as it scales gracefully and as long as the content is accessible, then I think it's just great. It's fantastic. It's something that this platform has an advantage over other native platforms.
Yeah, you actually mentioned, Antti, that 85% of your users are not using a VR headset.
Yes, like we of course look at statistics, so we see that only 15% of people press the VR button, so 85% look at it on screens. And it's sign of the times. I think when VR headset adoption is growing, this number will also grow. But definitely I think this kind of thing is driving adoption, VR headset adoption, because people see cool content, they can look at it on the bus, and they think, whoa, how would this look in VR? Let me go buy one and try it at home.
What would we call that? Progressive web VR? I mean, what would you call that concept?
Progressive enhancement.
Progressive enhancement strategy.
Same as the web, yeah.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts on the magic window?
Yeah, well, for me that's all about accessibility, yeah, because like nobody has a headset yet, like not much, like there's millions of headsets, there's billions of people, so we need accessibility, and that's a good thing about the web is like when I'm like on my Twitter feed, I'm seeing somebody sharing something, I just click on it and I can see it wherever I am, wherever the network is, very quickly, and if I find it interesting, then I put it on the side and I'm like, later on, when I have my headset, I can watch it. But like I'm on the bus now, or I'm in a conference, and I won't just pop up my headset. So that's why like it gives you a glimpse of what the VR experience is. And if you want to have better, then you just use your headset at this point.
And so like think about it, like you're suddenly opening up your range of people, who can use your content to anyone who has a smartphone. Suddenly you have that like the anxiety that a lot of the people in non-web VR space have. is who has a headset? Do they have it with themselves? Fabien, you mentioned the taboo as well. The cost of having to take off the headset has to be lower than the cost of keeping it on, right?
Yeah. It's so for when you put you need everything. You need to have the headset in the first place. You need like the social cost, because like if I put the headset now, somebody will take silly photos, somebody will do silly stuff, somebody will try to steal my wallet. So you need to have really, when you do WebVR, you can't just do a VR experiment in general. You need to really bring value, because it's expensive to put the headset, not just buying it but putting it on. So for now, we need to bring really, I don't know, plus 30, plus 50% of added value, being efficiency, being creativity, being all this. And when we want to do progressive enhancement, and we want to be able to consume that content even out of VR, but not of the cost of making still amazing VR experiments. Because if we just do it progressive, you still need to have this real value by picking it. So it's amazing to have content across all the platforms. You need good design thinking. Like, how do you do that so that each step of the way, either on the screen or on a tactile, on a tablet, and then putting the headset, it's all coherent. And I want to do VR in room scale. I mean, when you've done it one in room scale, it's really hard to do less than that. Mm-hmm. So to me, if all this progressive enhancement is not in a way to be pedagogical about VR, so that in the end people can put the headset after, don't like it so much. Yeah. It has to be because it's not. You want
there has to be a balance.
I've
heard this from a lot of people, from Google and the Oculus team and Antti and so on, is that there can be this way of hopefully balancing room scale in design, room scale and 2D, and somehow being able to tap both markets at the same time. Another perk is with WebVR is traversal linking, deep linking, and what I threw out there as the cyberspace kind of corny phrase, metaverse. How much of this work are you guys involved in personally at all with being able to connect diverse and different types of VR experiences together, trying to make it so that people can stay in and meander through?
Well, funny thing was that when WebVR was announced, that was going to be like the main feature. Everybody was thinking the web is all about linking.
Yeah.
And then actually that feature, like link traversal, didn't get into the browsers until very recently. So we were like 2 years without that feature. You couldn't do interlinked WebVR experiences. So that was kind of crazy. I don't know why that happened. Maybe you can explain, but
you need to explain
security reasons.
There
Not
were
just
security
Samsung.
reasons.
Yeah.
No, and same for Google. The thing is, I'm so attached to the metaverse. I'm attached to VR in general, but the metaverse is something that I really believe in. But so we were at San Jose to discuss with all the browser vendors, and we were like, we need link traversal. It's a core component for the metaverse. And then you speak with Brandon from Google, and he's editing a piece of code of the Chrome browser that is going to be pushed to literally billions of people who use to do the banking, to like vote, to do this kind of stuff. So it's not just a little tricky patch to play some experiment of going to one little VR experiment to another. It's a tool that people use in their daily life for something that's really fundamental for them. So I want to play with it. I want the metaverse and I want linking, but with the constraint of having a piece of software that's crucial in the life of billions of people. So the security issue, I was like, no, we don't care. We just want to click through and get to the next VR experience. There were real concerns for that. Because if you spoof, for example, one of the concerns is you go from one VR experience to the next, you click a link, you jump to it, and then it's actually not the link you're going to reach. And then somebody can spoof your bank account or whatever. Now we just play with little examples, but we will do banking in VR most likely, and we want to do it safely. So.
Yeah, I think actually lots of delays WebVR had was because of security, because for Chrome mainly, as you said, Chrome is 1 billion users. So it's like if they push something, they have to be sure that it's very secure. And so they are thinking of spoofing, of secure origin browsing, and a lot of stuff on like new designs, because when you are on a web page, so you have this URL with HTTPS in green saying that, okay, you're on a fine website, you're secured, at least for this part. And you have information, you have the browser all around, like saying you are on the browser right now. And there's a lot of limitations, like you cannot play a video automatically. The user has to ask for it by touching or like clicking on mobile. And there's a lot of limitation, and for VR there's a new world of limitations and things browser vendors have to think about, like how do you browse and how do you know where you are on which web page, how do you know it's secure, because they want the user to have the like easiest use of WebVR without feeling insecure actually. So maybe you can say a word about this on the Samsung aspect.
Well, it's on a similar vein to what you guys are talking about. What's, for example, this new paradigm that we need to create for the user to understand if he's in a secure connection, if he's in the website that he believes he is in, if it's something that, and now that you're mentioning the metaverse, if it's something that we're interacting with other people, how do we know that that person that's behind this representation of who we think he is or not, or she is? Also, for example, permissions. If we require to have access to sensors in the device, it's similar. How can we totally make sure that we are not compromising the user and the user's information? And that's paramount for any browser vendor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the metaverse, from one point of view, is my point of view, but actually brought me into the industry. I'm obviously big on it. How far away is it that it's not a catchphrase? How far is it? How easy do you think it will be for the web to embrace it? In one way, it's considered like a parallel internet in a way. And Thomas had a really awesome quote in one of the articles about how you meander through it in a very random way. Maybe it actually opens up that kind of weird meandering distribution flow that doesn't just exist otherwise. Is it sci-fi still?
I think it's not a thing that we won't say like now we have the metaverse. It will be like, oh, the metaverse happened 5 years ago, we didn't notice. Like the web, it's going to grow with the users. So that's by creating tools for the users to build VR experiences very easily, like Visor is doing, like A-Frame is doing, that the metaverse will be constructed. And once we have the proper tools to link them, so deep linking and a few other means, we'll realize that we can just go from one place to another. There it will be, but and nobody will like shout, "Oh, it's the metaverse, it's here." Or maybe Tony Parisi will at some point. Like you have to follow him on Twitter to know when the metaverse is done.
He's waiting for the metaverse tag.
Yeah.
He's like, bring the metaverse tag and just make it implement. You mentioned some of the components. There's traversal linking. There's backpacks. What are the main components that are being worked on and need to be done for it to start to happen?
Another question is like, how do you go from one place to another? Because like now, today, you can read a Wikipedia article, go from one link to another, and then like usually you just search in Google something else, and then you just like jump from one place to another. How will you do that in the supposedly metaverse? Like how do you do that? So there's Janus VR, which is like a very huge social platform for people, which is built on the same premises as the web, but like on a different coding base. And you just have like portals in some rooms which bring you from one place to another. But like, how do you go from one place to any other place? So that's the kind of question we are asking ourselves today, and like we don't have an answer yet. So once we'll have, I think we'll get a step further. But so that's one part. There's deep linking, of course, and a few other stuff.
Also, how will this metaverse support people with some sort of disability, people that, for example, cannot experience screens, or we were having this lunch a couple of days ago with my colleagues in London, and we were discussing actually about what is the metaverse, because if we go into this concept of the Ready Player One, where it's this world where I go and it's kind of like I was telling Peter and Ada, and this was only because they already have asked twice that about the weather in London. So we went on to talk about the metaverse, and we came into the discussion, but then what about all the things that are going to be bridging physical and virtual worlds? Can we have a metaverse where you can kind of like slowly be turning off some sort of layers in order to kind of filter and see what you want to see? It doesn't have to be this super immersive world where you just go in and you're sucked into this alternate reality Second Life. So I think there needs to be a lot of research and a lot of work done into how can we make people with disabilities, and again, it's me kind of pushing the make the content accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I feel it has a connection to the progressive enhancement strategy as well, to a certain extent. You kind of made the comment, what is immersion? What else can kind of be looped in? I've mentioned things like haptics have a role to play. Things like blockchain, IoT, everything can kind of bleed through. There's even now, a lot of talk about web AR. How do you guys see WebVR, the metaverse, connecting to everything?
Well, I think AR, VR, they are so close. Like, to me, it's all 3D graphics, and in AR devices, you are going to have a browser, and if you're going to have a browser, then you can enter WebVR. So that's definitely going to connect.
Right.
I don't know, blockchain, probably, yeah, sure.
There's no real question, is there?
Yeah.
It's just everything can go at whatever pace it wants and bleed into the other.
Mm-hmm.
If you can connect to it, I guess the important thing is if the web is under the layer that's underlaying there, and you can connect to it, because otherwise you can have a lot of separate experiences. But does that make a metaverse? You need to have this way of referencing, of pinpointing, of interacting, of being able to share. One of the things that we were discussing in this lunch was, okay, so what about if you have this this type of gallery that has a piece of geolocated AR sculpture? Is that part of the metaverse? Is it not part of the metaverse? If it's connected and you can access it, and then it can interface with other systems, because it's not going to be something that's going to be uniform. It's like the internet right now.
Right. It needs to be ugly in some. It has to include everything: the good, the bad, the ugly. There can't be filtering. There can't be deciding what is fit for the metaverse or is not.
Yeah, like
it's self-regulated. It's like you link to an experience. So there are three things that are like threshold, in my opinion, to do the metaverse. Number one is link traversal, which technically works, but it's kind of a hack. So you go through, for example, nightly, but then you keep the headset. So it kind of works, but not so well. The backpack, where you can bring your information from one experience to the next, so you can actually build on a workflow and go from one experience, make something, reuse it on another. And then the third one, which is not technical, is like he makes content so good that I can't help myself but link to it. So after you have my experience, then I link to his, and then he can't help but links to your experience, and then he can't help but links to yours. But so far we have little disparate content, but as is, it's like a bit of percolation when you have so much content that appears, and then you just can't help but link to it. That's when I'm opinion it will appear on its own.
You are going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was going to mention this quote from WebVR17, who was one of the original coders of the WebVR API. He said that web is the metaverse. It just has a 2D interface now. So it already is the metaverse.
It's the internet, but with the benefit of an added dimension.
Yeah.
That's all.
And also I want to say that the metaverse is not just the web. From my opinion, the metaverse is like any VR, but it has to be linked. So if you have like a sole universe, like without any mean to go from, let's say, so there's a couple of platforms today. There's ArtSpace VR, there's Janus VR, there's High Fidelity, there's Project Sensor coming up in a few months. If they just like stay enclosed in their walled gardens and you cannot go from one place to another, then it won't be the metaverse. But if from a web link I can go to Janus, then jump in High Fidelity to follow a friend, this kind of thing, then they will be part of the metaverse. If I can do that without thinking what I'm doing, actually, the user don't need to be like, okay, now I need to download the application, now I need to wait 15 minutes and make room on my disk to install this application. If it's just like jumping seamlessly from the web to an application to another application to back to the web, then there will be the metaverse, and it will be like a construction of everything which exists in VR today, and WebVR included, and applications included.
The
as
natural, the path of least resistance to do this is the web.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really
But they didn't know that, a lot of these guys who decided to, spend millions or whatever and build these huge, constructs without thinking of interoperability.
But they don't really want to.
So a lot of these things might just be big dead warehouses.
if they don't think about switching to an open network system, yeah, I think at some point people will be like, okay, I have no point in staying in this enclosed area where my friends are there. I want to be able to be with my friend no matter where they are. Be it also today it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, but I can jump from one tab to another to talk to my friends, and that's different friends. The metaverse needs to be the same thing. If it's an application, it's fine, but you have to not know that it is an application. It has to be as seamless as accessing any web link. Actually.
Okay. How are we with time? Oh, good. That's 5 minutes including the Q&A?
It includes Q&A. Yeah.
Oh, including.
So
we
we should
better
probably
get started
crack on to
with the
Q&A.
Thank you guys so much, and so let's open up to the audience. This is the most I've ever heard.
Just a reminder, when you got a question, put your hands up and we're going to pass a mic to you so we can record it and capture it. Thank you.
Hello, there we go. Just to rewind a little bit from the metaverse and back to performance questions and things like that. Obviously, in the high fidelity space, it may be easy to get the same experience as you can in something like a desktop Unity experience, and then also WebVR have them be exactly the same. However, on mobile, the performance margins are way smaller. There's no overheads for playing around. So with WebVR compared to Gear VR, where does the performance deficit lie? And will WebAssembly, for example, help alleviate that?
Yeah, it would. And there's this new browser coming, for example, Oculus Caramel, and on that one the performance is almost similar to native Gear VR. Well, not exactly, but we're getting pretty close. So the gap is becoming smaller.
To be just the troll here, you don't really care about performance. You care about how good the content you make will be perceived by the user, and if you want to do good-looking meshes with some effects that you don't ask for a Nokia click flag that's 15 years old, then it's good enough right now.
Well, yeah, but also there's the browser vendor parts, but there's also the developer parts, and there's a lot of people working on new things. So there's like Google working on Draco, which is like a compression format for 3D models, which helps like a lot to compress 3D models. But there are also teams, like a few weeks ago, I met a team in France doing WebVR, and they had a photogrammetry scene of like 1 million triangle, which is a lot. And they made it run on HTC Vive, but as well on mobile, because they had their own export format. And like that's something which is proprietary to them so far, but I'm like pushing them to open source it. So we'll see. But like there's a lot of things going on, and it's going to get better and better. And it's going very fast. And I think by the end of the year we'll see very good things.
Thank you.
So we got another question at the far end. We run, Forrest. Run that mic down.
We have 1 minute and 38 seconds.
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick. So we've been playing around with HoloLens, and I noticed at CES they launched some kind of like sunglasses, R8, R9. So how far are we from taking the VR, MR experience? Like you plug it in when you come home, and then you just plug it out and you take it with you like you would a smartwatch or a phone, and it would connect with your phone. Like that would be the extension of the metaverse. Like you would actually have a seamless transition from your home. Like, what's your view on how far are we from this kind of experience?
John Carmack said 2 years ago, I think, about lenses, but like that's more a question for hardware vendors, I guess, like where they're going to go. Yeah, it can be in a few years, it can be in 20 years if we figure out there's some problem in the way. But it's going to be there at some point, and very quickly if you think about your own mobile.
So
like
for the software stack, because the order will just, for us guys, it's we wait and see, we don't work on hardware. The two main actors will be Microsoft and Google with Project Tango and Microsoft with HoloLens. So both for the W3C WebVR effort, and they are actively developing and working on it. So they have engineers in the browser working not just on the spec but on the implementation. WebVR, Google I/O in a month. Expect maybe an announcement. We'll see. But you have it's coming, and their main vendor and hardware are on it. So,
And that's all we have time for. Now, if that wasn't a great geek out, I don't know what is. Come on. And at the beginning of your session, I did tweet you in hashtag Metaverse. So if we get that trending, guys, you all owe me a beer. Yeah?
Yes.
Round of applause, guys. Thank you.